welcome back to Creative Perspectives. I'm Brandy. Today's topic is crushing fear. Excuse my shirt. I just finished a wet t-shirt contest. I am so joking. I literally just came from my pool area. I was trying to be lazy. Instead of turning the pool valve on, I decided to use the water hose instead because it's closer to the door. And also we're in our area, we have a water restriction, volunteer water restriction put in place. So I'm trying to navigate how to bring the calcium levels down while not overdoing the water usage for the sake of making sure everybody has water. Anyway, let's move forward. Thank you for coming back. Remember, this channel is just for entertainment purposes only. I do use personal experiences that I've gone through to try to create humor. Sometimes I might not be the best at it, but my goal is to lighten the load as we talk about tougher subjects or subjects that may be impacting you at home. I'm a big fan of anything that helps you overcome anything that's happening in your life, any incidents that you're currently going through. I'm all for it. Whether it takes comedy, whether it takes drama, it doesn't matter. It's more towards helping people heal. And I hope you get something out of my channel. I'm still trying to fine tune. This is, I believe, my fifth video. I haven't posted the second part of part one of Crushing Fear, but this is the third. This would be the third video in Crushing Fear. So anyway, our main thing is we want to start overcoming obstacles in our lives and crushing them, so we can move forward and get, to the finish line, before our time is up on this earth. Anyway, let's get started. So the first thing I would like to say, whenever we're talking about fear, the very first thing you have to do is figure out where it's coming from, where the origins of the fear is coming from. The next thing we want to try is to start seeing if there's any healing that needs to take place in the origins of where the fear is started. And then after that, we need to identify whether or not it's something we can do on our own or something we need other people to come in with us, or our support team to come in to help us through the process of overcoming whatever is keeping us in fear. Now, I will say this is something I didn't touch upon in the other videos when I didn't review video 2, but one thing I noticed I didn't touch upon is sometimes you're overcoming one set of circumstances that's causing you fear or anxiety, and then you may still have more coming your way. So as you get through one thing, you may get hit with another incident or an event that may cause you to be skeptical and push yourself back into fear if you're not careful. So we want to make sure, the way I've overcome those, like when I was dealing with like a narcissistic sociopath, literally in every sense, was I only dealt with what was coming at me in that moment. I didn't worry about what the future would bring. I only brought in that moment what needs to be handled right now. And in the incidents and the events that I had to go through, I had to bring in help, because it was beyond my depth. It's things I would never do to other people, and not a way of thinking that I was brought up, to think in that way. I have a loving family, and I was brought up that way. So it's like to have someone pretend to be nice and smile in your face, and then start strategically making moves to cause harm. That was a new ball game for me. So anyway, in order to overcome that part of fear when it's still coming at you, first of all, only deal in the moment. Like, what is immediate? What's the priority in this situation? What do I need to take on in this moment? The rest, you have to be able to leave it alone, because then you'll start overwhelming yourself. Your anxiety will definitely increase, and then you may not be able to make 2 steps forward or even 1, or you might make half of a step, and then now you're retreating back or retracting back to your original position. So, and what I would say is just only deal with what you need to deal with in that moment. And then you need to be able to go through the process of the other videos I talked about as far as healing. I didn't do a video on healing. I will later, but go through the process of forgiveness, forgiving the person. And part of forgiveness requires some form of healing depending on what you are going through during that time, or the incident, or the event, or you know, we all have different things going on. So we have unique lives, you know, and we should acknowledge that and not be ashamed of your unique life. You know, some people go through more than others. So I never look at another individual, and I think that's something, you know, especially if you're claiming to be Christian, we have to be careful of. And of judging another person's walk and steps. We have to be able to, you know, meet them where they are, and acknowledge, you know, the stage of their life that they may be in, and use compassion and empathy towards that situation. But we don't have to always become overly indulgent or overly involved in their issues, you know, but we do have some type of responsibility when God brings somebody into our lives that may require our attention or something from us, you know, that we can provide, because obviously if they're coming there, God made them come there, but now it's like you have to figure out why without overreaching and overstepping your position. You know, as far as the type of advice you're giving, make sure it's not a controlled advice, you know, because then that's not love, you know, that's not giving people God's love. That's telling them, you know, it's self-serving, you know, type of mindset. Like, well, but one thing I've learned is if you're trying to help somebody, especially in fear-based issues, is you can still give them an opinion, but let them know, okay, if that was me, I might do this. You know, we all speak different languages. You know, and I always try to use the chess game. You know, we're in the game of life is chess. You know, we have our own side of the board, and our opponents have their own side of the board, or the people we encounter have their own sides of the board. So we must be sensitive and aware that not everything is built for our world. You know, everybody, you know, they have their own world that they were brought up in. And as soon as we acknowledge that, it will make things a lot more easier in America. Maybe we could reduce school shootings and craziness that goes on, and, you know, help people start overcoming the mental and emotional and spiritual barriers that they're stuck in, that they can't get out of, that may be causing them to do harm to others, or to focus on heinous acts, you know, to make sure other people suffer because they feel like they're suffering. But anyway, when we're, sorry, when you're, getting back to my point, when you're talking about crushing fear, and then you have a succinct amount of other incidents happening as you heal. So you're like one thing, and then another thing, and then another thing, and then another thing is occurring. The only thing I could suggest in that situation is pretty much stay prayed up, and you know, call God. You know, I'm a big fan of, like, just give him a list, him or her. You know, we don't know if God's a him or her. You know, we're all made by him, so he has to be a little bit of both, he or she. So anyway, with compassion, you know, talk to God and be kind to yourself. You know, sometimes we can make our own choices that can get us, you know, involved in issues that we shouldn't be in, and depending on the outcome of that situation, you could bring on more anxiety than was intended. So my thing is, like, if I'm overwhelmed with anything that takes me off balance, then I have to get rid of that, because that's what keeps my life in balance. And I would encourage people to do the same. Now, if you're dealing with childhood traumas, or, you know, heavy traumas that you've had to go through that was out of your control, the main thing is, don't just think you could just continue life because at some point in time, whether you encounter another individual or whether somebody becomes your trigger or their behavior becomes your trigger, you're going to have to revisit the same cycle, the same patterns of how you feel and how you felt when you were going through that traumatic situation. So to me, the best way to get rid of it is, face it head on. Acknowledge it, respect your feelings, honor your feelings. I know men are taught, don't feel, in some households, don't feel and don't feel your emotions. So they're running through life bottled up with all of these emotions or untapped emotions, and then next thing you know, there's explosions going on in their brain and their actions, and everybody else is looking sideways at what they're presenting to the world. So I would say I would be encouraging people, speak out, talk, get it out of your system, don't hold it in, be brave, develop a support team of like-minded thinkers or people who've gone through what you have gone through. But sometimes even with that, you don't want to sit up there and have a crying session all the time. You want to come out of that, because I have met some people where they talk about their support systems, and it's like, yeah, it's good to cry it out and all of that, but what's the next step? If all you're doing is crying about it and just staying in it, are you growing out of that to get to the next step? So it's all about growing out of it, getting better, healing from it, forgiveness, forgiving the people that's wronged you and forgiving yourself for anything that you have contributed to that situation. I talked about assault before. I talked about later on in life, but my first incident was a pure rape, straight up. And with that one, obviously if you're 17 years old and that's never happened to you before, it's a devastation. And when you're 17, you're still developing the emotions. I mean, that's like the first time you're falling in love, and and your parents are telling you one thing and you're like, but I love him, he's mine, honey, I love him, mama. And then you have your first cries, depending on your age, and boyfriends and girlfriends, that type of deal. So that phase is a beautiful thing. It's designed to help us grow. It's our first stage of growth, first time, smooching, smooching and noticing the guy's pecs, and, so, and your eyes are starting to open, at, what you looking like. I mean, what you're looking at, especially with, boys and girls, I see the guys at school, in high school, standing along the wall looking at the girls. Now, I was one of those where I wasn't developed as much. So they was like, what, we ain't paying attention to you. Go take your nerdist. But, well, we over here looking at the girls with the in the back, getting that. Boom, boom. So anyway, but that's your first stage of love. So to have anybody violate, that part of you in that stage, it can bring some confusion as to, love and then fear in that situation, because you're like, okay, whoa. It's out of the ordinary for something like that to happen, or not really, not in America and, today's society. But, during that time, it was different for me, and it was hard to discuss and talk about, because when you're younger, it's like you're trying to figure things out too. Especially when you're in that age group where you're transitioning from being, 17, and then you're trying to figure out being an adult, trying to figure out college and, all of that. But I could tell you this, during my incident, and like I said, this is about crushing fear and getting over it. During that time, my youngest brother, he had to go to school, and where I grew up, the second part of where I grew up, um, during that time, we lived in a neighborhood that was extremely safe. I mean, it's so safe now. It's been, what, 57 years or so? There's no crimes that's been committed in that area at all. It's mostly like people die of old age, or there's a medical issue that arises, but there's no crime in that area. So, but anyway, so we used to keep the doors unlocked, and my youngest brother, he would always forget stuff. And I think we all do, but he was forgetful. And, I'm used to that second knock, like, oh, I got to come back and get this or something like that. So I thought it was my brother, and the perpetrator that I had a relationship, came in. We had a, what do you call that? Like a foyer that has, tile, but it's the slippery tile. So I have my socks on, and I always used to like to wear my dad's shirts. I know, when I first got married, my first husband, he's the one that actually helped teach me to dress. Now, I knew how to dress like nice for church, that type of dressing, and you wear your nice shirts and then nice skirts and all of that. But as far as my everyday wear, I was more like tomboy-ish, like where I would just throw things on. I wasn't really trying, So when he first got a hold of me, he was like, when I first met you, he was like, I thought you were fat because you wear these big old shirts and all this, but it's comfortable, So anyway, getting back to the story, my life story, sorry. There's a knock at the door, and we have two glass sides on that door, but I did not look out the door. I just automatically assumed, based on the timing of when my brother walked out the door and when the knock occurred, that that was my brother. So I opened up the door. Next thing I know, the dude took a VCR that I had given him like when we were dating, and then shoved it into my stomach, and then I flew across the floor because the thing was so slippery, and I had my socks on, and then I hit my head, and then I was kind of dizzy. Then I was only about 120 some pounds, or maybe less than that. It was like maybe 110. I was a little tiny, shapeless thing. So he picked me up like one arm and grabbed a knife out of the kitchen, and my parents' kitchen, and then threw me on the couch, and then he started pacing back and forth with this knife. So I'm up there looking at the knife, like obviously terrified, but trying to get my bearing too. I've always grew up in church and God, so I'm very familiar. So obviously that's the very first thing that I did. I started praying, and then next thing I know, he brought the knife over, and we won't explain the rest. But right after the incident, he got up, started talking crazy, and then he walked out of the house. Obviously I was, there traumatized, and then I eventually got myself together because I was like, I don't want my mom, my dad, my brothers coming home seeing me like this. So I just remember my first husband, we were talking, we were dating at that time, and he told me, we were in contact with that, and that's back in the day where pagers, there was pay phones and pagers. So I just got in the car, and then I got in my car, and then I just went straight to his place and then let myself in. He gave me a key to his place, and then and I stayed and I waited for him to get from work, and I told him. Now on the home front, my parents thought, hey, Brandy's gone, and but at that time I had transitioned into being, I believe, close to 18. But anyway, I started staying more, at my boyfriend, who became my husband, his place. And then he was devastated when he came home, saw me in the condition I was, and he handled everything, and obviously there was some anger. He flipped everything over, out of like somebody else doing that, and it was a lot for both of us. So we ended up bonding, you know, over that situation. And then I started reintegrating myself at home, but I never spoke to my parents about the incident, you know, that actual day, because we had a family where my mom was hairdresser and my dad was, you know, working, and, you know, it was cool, you know, so it's like, I didn't want to disturb that. So anyway, the guy, you know, didn't stop there. He kept the stalking going on. He even came up to my school, and my one of my teachers named Ruby, she had to, you know, call campus police to get him off. And I told her what happened, because he was putting flowers and stuff in my car, you know, leading up to that event. And it was, you know, a lot for me to take in, to be getting A's and B's and then turn around and be terrorized, you know, by somebody like that. So anyway, I spoke to his brother, told him what was going on, and before that incident happened. But anyway, we ended up leaving where I was from and moving way across the country. You know, so anyway, getting back to fear and how I overcame that, and I'm hoping this would bless you, and trying to overcome your fear as well. Sometimes being thrown into new situations can help, you know, but you still need to make sure you're actively talking about what happened, actively acknowledging what happened, because it can be overwhelming. And remember, it's not just your incident or the event that's going to cause emotions. You also still have to maintain a job, you know, have work, deal with whatever's happening in your work environment. If you have, you know, I didn't have any children at that time, but let's say you have kids. Kids have their own personalities, their own needs, their wants, their desires, their goals, their attitudes, their character. And as they get, you know, each stage, they kind of change, and then they have brand new stuff. So you're like, oh, I thought we got through this part. Okay, so now something new develops, you know, so now we have to help our kids grow in a different way, you know. But you know, at that time there was no children involved, so I was actively, you know, talking to him, and he was like the best. I'm telling you, the best person. I think God brings people to you, even with flaws and all. We are all flawed, and he gives you the people you need in your life in the moments that you need them for the purposes that are required at that time. So anyway, talking about it is definitely something you need to do. Actively talk about it. Actively. And then don't look at yourself as some victim. You know, the actions of other people is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is your response to it. And that's it. Your response. You can't sit up there and take any kind of responsibility. I could sit up here and beat myself up. I unlocked the door. I did not look on the side, because there's two long glass doors, and all I had to do is turn around and look through that glass thing and see who was outside. Okay, that's all I had to do. But the truth of the matter is, it didn't happen the way, you know, that, you know, I should have done that. But I didn't beat myself up about it, because the situation, the event already happened. So what are you going to do? Keep sitting in, I should have, could have, would have? No. Just go into the place of, this happened. I need to get this stuff out of me. And how can I do this quickly? So that person has no power. You got to remember, any violence is about power, control. And repeat it. Like some people, they like to power control, but then they like to repeat patterns of poor choices to cause you to stay in that fear, that anxiety. And that when you start fighting back, you'll be amazed at the different responses you have to individuals like that. I've seen a complete 180-degree change out of the person who did the second one when I was in 2018, March 26th, going into March 27th to be exact, of 2018. You know, I was close to, now I'm 40, how old am I? 41, and then I'll be 42 shortly. Libra season, whoop whoop. But anyway, but I was much older, and I'm telling you, God could work some miracles if you give him a chance to, him or her, a chance to actually work in your favor. So I did my due diligence, and sometimes you have to do your due diligence. You have to face the fear head on. You have to acknowledge it, and you have to bring it up. And some people don't want to feel all of those emotions, but it must come out, because if it doesn't come out, it's going to come out in a lot of different ways that you don't want it to. And so sometimes you just got to do what you have to do to address it, to heal from it for you. I remember I was coming from the airport, picking up my son, and I couldn't find my car, and I forgot where I parked. So obviously airport parking is, if you forget where you park, you're going to be out there all day. So I finally talked to a lady who worked at the airport, and I told her I think I lost my car. So she was like, I'll help you find it. But during the time that she was walking me to help find my car, her and I, we started to just talk. And she revealed to me that her husband, was excessively abusive. When they were younger, they were married, 19 years. And in that situation, he almost killed her, so they ended up splitting, and then like 40, 30 plus whatever. He was too old to do that. But anyway, they came back together as friends. He moved on, had a new life, and she was talking to me about, it made me open up about my situation to her, and she, was very encouraging. But her level of forgiveness was, we both forgive, but we just have a different way of re-interaction. Should we re-interact or not? So she chose to interact, with her ex, and then she said they're better friends now than when they were together, and he helps her, all that. But there was a big difference in when they came back. So they had years apart after the incident, and then obviously he made some changes to become a better man, and then he came back, as just friends, because the damage sometimes is already done in the situation. So, but me, I operate different. Like, once you show me who you are, the way I think is there's millions of people out there that are good people. And it's like you want to stick with what's going to help you in life continue to grow and evolve spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And you don't want to get caught up in your past. You want to go forward. So so my way is to get rid of them and don't revisit at all, and let them just go about their life. And if they become better, hopefully it'll be for the other person. But the experience that I had, it gave me my own perception about that individual, or what I'm saying. So anyway, crushing fear, I think it has a lot also to do with forgiveness, outside of acknowledging it. Now acknowledging it and then processing the emotions behind it, and deciding whether or not you could do this by yourself, or you need an extra hand of people you trust with your emotional state. Because remember, I'm a big fan of, you got to be careful too when you are in a state of any type of trauma, because other people could traumatize and bring more to the table and overwhelm you in that process as you are trying to find your way out of trying to figure out how to crush your fears, So anyway, and then overcome obstacles and barriers. So, if you got the right people, God bless you. God bless you. And then if you don't have anyone, you might have to do this thing on your own, which is going to make you stronger and strengthen you a lot more. But technically, you're not alone. You just have to know you could take it and talk to God and let him work out the details on your behalf while you continue to live life. You just tell him what's going on, what you need, and then move forward, and just don't be afraid to speak up and speak out. That's my timer. Anyway, and then after that, the forgiveness piece comes in, and I did like the first 3 videos on forgiveness. I'll try to do more, but right now I have to be inspired. I can't just start going in, because as you can see, I could struggle if I don't have the ideas laid out in my head. So if God doesn't give it to me, you probably won't hear me talk about it too soon. It's like he has to give me the inspiration to be able to make it through and to give you points. If it doesn't, I'm not going to force myself. But in this moment, just heal after you go through those steps. The next thing is healing, and then the next part is the forgiveness of the people, places, things that have wronged you, and then remembering, in that everyone is different, and if you hold any grudges, hate, all of that, you kind of minimize your ability to see everything from a higher perspective, and to be able to see it from different angles. Sometimes we get stuck in our own way, our own train of thought, and we can't make it past that, and then we're missing the trauma and the stuff we could be causing onto other people, or the harm, or things that we could be doing as well. So it's like you really, after you start, crushing fear, crushing your barriers, and you get better at it, you will tend to see life much differently. You won't sit in your situation. You'll move, through it and away from it if you need to. I also talked about a different incident, or a different person was the one where the grandfather was with the 3-year-old, and it was reported and all that stuff. I don't know this person personally, but it came from somebody that kind of, it's more hearsay, because it's not somebody I directly know. It's just somebody that was brought to my attention that watched the series. But I could tell you this, you can't allow people to dominate you in life and put you in a place of fear. You have to definitely start fighting back. And if you're a younger individual, you may have to bring in outside sources and people to help with that situation. But I can tell you, the enemy always wants you to be in a place of displacement, mental, emotional, physical displacement. So he can keep you in a state of having your mind cluttered with something. Some people have their mind cluttered with weight loss, like, I feel like I'm so fat, and and then that's the enemy trying to tell you, and then now you're preventing yourself from just, getting in the gym and just get started, and one step at a time, and knowing that the goal will come. The main thing of getting through fear and breaking barriers is to really live our lives, and to grow in areas where we feel we need growth. Our growth and our success is based in the eye of the beholder. I could just want to have a great physique, and then that's my beginning, my middle, and end for me. The next thing is, okay, you got what you want. Now, how are you going to help somebody else with what they need? So, but everybody's goals are different, and rightfully so. But when we're talking about crushing fear, you just can't let the devil have his way. And because remember, the devil uses people, so you just have to keep it where it belongs. So okay, so we talked about acknowledging, processing the emotions, and then going through your healing stage, which will be a separate video in depth on healing. And then we talked about forgiveness. And then I gave you an example from my life, so you can know I'm not just playing, it's more like I've been through something, and here we go, so I'm praying that those 3 things, you can start off, knocking down barriers, and getting help, and speaking up and out about your situation, and then setting clear goals. Sometimes goals, it doesn't have to be in your professional life or your family life. Sometimes it could be your healing process too. Another thing is you have to find your triggers. What are your triggers? And the only way sometimes you can identify that is if people bring stuff to you, and then if you feel those same emotions, then that's a trigger. So if somebody brings panic and fear, that's a trigger, and now you have to identify the behavior that person has that's similar to something you've seen before, maybe, So finding your trigger, writing it down, and then getting some self-help books on how to go through, those processes of understanding triggers and, how to get out of it or how to acknowledge it. So when it does happen, you don't have to have a great response to it. You could just, it minimizes it, and then eventually it possibly can go away depending on what you're dealing with in that moment. Another thing is obviously counseling. Dealing with counselors, they can give you some really good tools and workbooks. Just talk to you for about a half hour, and it's getting so cool now to where they can do video calls. So that's another way of helping you through your fear, your anxiety. Also, okay, so we went through the process. We went through obviously resources, far as just getting some books. Obviously you have the whole World Wide Web, full of information. And you just want to make sure, the website has .org or .edu or, a reputable website too when you're going to stuff to try to find some resources on that's specific to your situation. And then you have to have the courage, to go through things alone. Sometimes people's self-esteem, they're crushed, and you have to be able to rebuild it, because trust me, when the enemy tries to come in, he's coming in to destroy you even further. So if you stop looking at that person saying, this person did this to me, and you start looking at it from a spiritual sense, the entity that's attached to them, that was inside of them, was partly responsible for that, because remember, God gives us free will. So, so you can't just put the responsibility on an entity. We all have to be able to pray. And then even pray for our enemies. Sometimes praying for your enemies can help heal you and relieve you out of some of your stressors and your emotions and your fears. If anything, pray for your enemies heavily, because sometimes the people that's acting out the most need it the most, And so that's all I have to say about that. I hope you enjoyed this video a lot better than my second one, because I did part 2. I haven't watched it yet, but this one I felt a little bit more comfortable pushing, forward. So if I helped you, it's great. Later on I'll start doing more research as far as more ways for healing. But right now, sorry, I have my computer. I do want to throw one Bible verse at you. I normally start off with it, but I figured since I'm on the same series, I use love and, how love, conquers with discipline, Bible scriptures on that. But there was one that just came out. I'm on my computer, by the way, and I'm looking down, and I'm praying I can find it, because, there's 1,000 scriptures on it. But anyway, at least I wrote down what it was. So it's Leviticus chapter 19, verse 14, and it's about people who can't hear and people who can't see. Don't put pretty much stumbling blocks in their way. So if a person is not really into Christianity or whatever, don't be their critic. Don't be the person that beats them up. Just let them, do what they need to do, and just use the tools that God gave you to try to find out what part you need to play in the situation that they're currently in. Let me see if I can find this real quick, because I like to do it verbatim. But if not, that's okay. Okay, hold on, let's see. But if you look it up, you'll be able to see it. All right, I'm going to end it there. God bless you. Try to crush your fears, I guess. Get out there. Don't stay hermited and, just don't let anybody bring you down and keep you there, or try to, or attempt to. It won't be a good feeling for you. And my thing is, you have to try to smile as soon as possible. So, and you can't do that if you're stuck. If something is, preventing your growth, to me, you have to be able to look at it and then start touching upon it, and then trying to figure it out. So anyway, God bless you. Oh, one more point. Yeah, we talked about that. Another thing is, sometimes you may have to separate yourself from everybody, and sometimes the reason why is because everybody has, whatever their spiritual attachments are. Some people have good, some people have bad. And when they start dealing with you, they're bringing everything to the table. The best drawing in my head, I would like to, if I was a good drawer, a person who could draw, would be a whole bunch of like white for angels and then gray for demons, and then put you in the center and then put everybody over you. So you can see, you could get weighed in, so sometimes you just got to break free, handle things on your own until you get a place of healing, until you could go through all the processes of dealing with your fears. Dealing with your fears. So for instance, like if you're scared, of not passing a class, if you're in college or in school, then you have to be able to crush that fear and say, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? I could get an F or a D or a C. And the best thing that could happen is I could get my A or my B. So just stop it right there. I'm going to study. I'm going to study. This is the time I'm going to give myself. I'm going to relax, clear my head from all the other stressors, everything else that's going on in my life or your life, just clear it out and just have that moment of calmness and stillness. And if you don't know how to do that, sometimes it's just really you got to focus on just releasing everything out of your brain and just sitting there and relaxing. And then you could do some good self-talk, letting yourself know, I could do this. I'm going to make it through this. I'm going to get an A. One thing I talked about is when I looked at life and where I was going in life, I've never looked in terms of losing ever. It never comes up. So it's like, you have to be able to do that. Look at yourself like, I'm going to get that A. I'm going to pass this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then just also pray about it. So you can have that extra layer of protection. And then now what comes into play is doing your due diligence. Okay, I want my A. How am I going to get it? That means I'm going to have to hit the books. I'm going to have to study. And I'm going to have to clear out everything else. Turn my phone off. Don't answer my door. Stuff like that. Or if you have a family and you're doing it, talk to your children. Have a group chat. Like, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing this, to make our family better, to uplift and to grow our family dynamics. And we're doing this as a team. So I need you to be on my side as a team. And this is what I need from you. And then that can help your children understand. Because sometimes, even as adults, we leave our children out. But because I'm a single mom, I always have to include my son in. Because, like, say if I get sick, who's going to be cooking? I can't cook. So I had to teach my son some recipes that he could do that's simple, and teach him the proper way of adding, the seasoning, which we're still working on that part. But, so sometimes I have moments where I need him. So he's my team. We're a team. So it's like you have to talk to your children and not down to them, but talk to them so they can understand what you're trying to do, in hopes that they can do it. And it works. Sometimes there's a little resistance, but then other times it's like, okay, I see the bigger picture. And it's hard for kids because they just want to play, do what they need to do. And they're not trying to be, in any position to take on your responsibilities as a grown-up. They're more like, hey, you want your kids to stay in their lane too, but sometimes you have to bring it all in. Like, look, this is what I'm trying to do. This, and sometimes you gotta go apologize. Like, I'm sorry about earlier. I felt I put some of my responsibilities on you, and it's just like, your kids are really just people, and you can put fear in them too. That's why I try not to put fear in my son, because I want him to be able to say no. So for instance, he told me, there was a guy that came up to him after his jujitsu class and ask him for his email address, a grown man. And, Xavier just flat out said no. And I was like, that's my boy, because I didn't raise him to be fearful. I raised him to be aware, but I told him, you got to stand up for yourself. When people or adults are not around, you're going to have to do your thing, so it's the same thing with your children, same thing. They're people, just younger people, that can get away with some stuff. Sometimes I wish I was younger. I don't want to pay bills. I don't want to strategize for the future. I just want to get out there and just have some fun, But as you get older, it's fun seeing your children, because it reminds you of, when you were a kid, playing red light, green light, yellow light, stop, run around the corner. You see the kids doing their little jump rope, or at the swing set trying to learn how to swing. You get kids crying on the swing set. So it's kind of cute to re-see the next generation come up. So I'm off topic, but crushing fear. Sometimes we have to have a conversation with the people around us to get everybody on the same sheet of music and let them know where we are, where we stand in our emotional state, our spiritual state, and then just let them in. Any help is good help sometimes, as long as it's good help, though. So anyway, God bless you. Bye. And